think we have time to go through that entire list. There are about 46, I think, different bugs reported. We use this tag called delta that with 3D to flag the 44. Exactly, 44. To flag the important differences between the two versions. So you see things such as let's see, keyboard navigation in the dash, very important way down pad. Driving things from the dash to the launcher, or driving things from the desktop to the launcher, that kind of things. Also, visually speaking, the items such as the uploading effects that we don't have. I don't really know how to go about that here. If there is anything to discuss specifically, we can. The list is really long. Is there any item that is very interesting for anybody here? Particularly interesting that we should discuss?
Yeah, there's the accessibility issue.
Right, very good point. So today Unity doesn't have any accessibility whatsoever. I know the Nokia folks are here to discuss that. Maybe you can come.
Yeah, I can just say in 2 words that accessibility, we know that is our kind of bad part. There is no accessibility in QML whatsoever right now. And there are plans, there is work already going on. I believe there was a blog post on the labs.q.com about accessibility about the upcoming project.
Yeah, there's the QDS Live bridge is currently being worked on. I can't remember his name. I don't know where that stands in regards to QML. I know standard Q bridges is sort of getting there. I intend to play with it. It's not so distant future, but yeah, it's coming along, but I'm not sure about that.
It is coming along from both sides. He is working on both the API to bridge for Q2 as a backend possibility, and on the API for QML. Even if you create your own component,
So that sounds great. Because so in Unity, we use really over time QML, not so much the key widgets.
There is Q4.8 is already branched, so most likely it will not be part of the Q4.8. It might be too late, and the implementation is not yet ready, so it will take more time to implement it. It works already. I actually have an example. If anyone is interested, I can show it afterwards. Well, example as in the Qt application, inaccessible, Orca announces everything in the most of the stuff in the application. However, there are plans, at least we are thinking about backporting it to 4.8 upwards.
That sounds great.
Well, one thing I was talking to Scott Kinnaman, who's involved with KDE, and he was saying there's also questions about when 4.8 will be out, and there's talk of possibly trying to backport some of that to 4.7, which is currently on.
That is entirely realistic.
Okay.
Absolutely. All the patches we have against 4.8 are also applicable to 4.7. There's nothing special required. So I would actually love for Unity to be the test case we have to see if the implementation holds up. Absolutely. So yeah. Who wants to discuss this later on accessibility?
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Can I just
ask from Q software?
Can I just ask a general question, which kind of applies to what happens in the IC split? We've got discussing what's the current status of how much we've distro patched QML? So what's the actual delta between upstream and what's the new version?
We have one patch, one liner.
Okay, we just have like one liner?
Yeah.
Is it like particularly not like invasive, but does it change a lot?
No, it's really nothing.
Okay. Alright. Yeah.
So we've been very lucky this cycle. I mean, we didn't hit any roadblocks in QML itself to look into it.
Okay. Yeah, because
yeah, a few workarounds, but
accessibility.
Yeah.
But just let us know about those workarounds. Let us know about those workarounds.
Yeah, we do. We filed patches upstream, or we did it. And basically, we don't really distro patch because we just have the workaround and we find the patch upstream, and that's it.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Nice. Any other topic on the data engineering 3D that is particularly relevant to anybody here?
So I guess with regards to keyboard nav, is how I know there's two code bases. How are we going to make sure that we keep keyboard nav related commands and stuff in sync with 3D?
So I believe the cost tracking them. Right, we don't have a technical solution for that. I believe the cost of implementing one is higher than actually the cost of manually synchronizing our code bases.
So just to go with the page where all the structures are listed in
Right. The key point is to have it really well documented, and if it's really well documented, both teams, I'm sure, will implement that.
Okay.
That should go in the QA as well, so that somebody tests to make sure that the keyboard navigation is the same in both.
Right. I guess the general point where we want to have the same ability in being able to test both products and even spot the differences, and if there are any, try to find them.
Something that might be worthwhile looking to, especially for all these bugs, is trying to determine exactly what QML allows us to do in terms of like, for example, like D&D is a pretty big one. Trying to determine what QML allows us to do, and then if it's too difficult, Unity would have to be implementing that themselves. It would be better just to sync that code base from Unity 3D and actually just make that a shared module. For example, like the D&D stuff is very much like its own separate module within Unity 3D, and that can be like very easily shared over. And that would help to fix a lot of the bugs you already have with like D&D not working.
Right, so I guess the lesson here is that anytime you're trying to do something that's already done in the other version, check out what's there.
We'll first check to see if it's going to be supported by QML, and if you're like going to be conflicting fundamentally with the way like QML actually works. And then second of all, if it doesn't, then it's better to just sync those code bases rather than have to like reinvent it all the time.
I agree. So talking about that, I don't see Neil or anybody else.
They're all
here.
in
But we had very good talks about sharing most of our code bases through the backend stuff. So today you have like 20% of the code is QML UI stuff, and like 80% of it is just C++ trying to get some data from somewhere. And it turned out that 80% of this 80% is code that is exactly duplicated from what is in Unity 3D. So the idea here would be to remove all of that code and make the code base really small and tight and identical to what is in 3D.
And Tim's already made a lot of progress on this, hasn't he? Hasn't Tim already made a lot of progress?
Yeah, we discussed on how we could share the APIs and how we could create a C++ library that could be bound really easily to the Q library and then share it across both projects. It goes for everything. It goes for the places, for the launcher, for the panel, the workspace feature, all of it.
Has he given an estimate on how much longer it's going to take?
It is a significant effort, but we're going to try to go smartly about it. Backing first the new pieces, making sure that any new piece that comes in is shared before even thinking of rewriting the old ones. Anything else about data between the two versions?
Yes. Yeah, is the goal to be completely kind of feature equivalent? Because there are some things that, are you going to draw a line at any point and say, it's too hard to do that smoothly and well without 3D acceleration, and therefore we're not going to implement it?
Right. So if that happens one day, we will do that. We will make that choice. But it hasn't happened so far, so.
Okay.
That's what it is. Well, if the okay guys did the job well, it should be fine.
Yeah, so I think the general story with the delta is that we're trying to minimize it, like in interaction and UI wise. However, we are going to have to draw lines on like what the UI actually looks like. So, for example, in Unity 2D, it's practically impossible to do like smooth blurring or scaling of windows that's not slow, right? So there's obviously going to be like a color point where we say like, okay, this is going to be too difficult to do. However, like the basic interactions are all the same. That's my understanding.
Right.
Yeah, I think the point here is to share as much as possible of the behavior so that the user switching from 2D to 3D does not notice any change in the way he interacts with the desktop. And we can fall back on some effects if they are not as long as the behavior remains the same.
Right, we have a good question from Seb asking about, so he's stating that Unity 2D should be the fallback for Oneiric, is that it?
Yeah.
And they're asking about the upstream Zone 3 fallback?
Yeah, I believe the desktop team is packaging all that up already.
Right.
And we'll just be able to install it as a meta package. It's my understanding of what the situation is. Well, there's a PPA at the moment. I think it's going to be like synced into main. But
It's kind of irrelevant to this session.
yeah, that's anything. So just in case you were wondering. Yeah. All right, should we move on?
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, so the primary focus
of Unity 2D is the graphics impaired systems.
Today, yes.
So over any kind of parity with functionality or look and feel of the Unity 3D implementation, if you will, the base Unity. So it's not, obviously implementing Qt, you're not so restricting 2D versus 3D, but we're making a conscious effort to support those graphics environments that don't have this capability.
Exactly.
Is that a correct statement?
That's a very correct statement. So what we do as part of the development is testing on various local boards that doesn't have, where we don't have access to the GPU for some reason. So that's our mission statement.
I have a question about this. The list of bugs that shows the diff between Unity 2D functionality today and Unity. So that's the difference today. But as we know, Unity is going to be developed in certain respects, so there will be a new diff. What are the plans, if any, for Unity 2D to stay in parity with the new developments of Unity?
Well, the short answer to that is close collaboration. I mean, we have to collaborate closer than we did in the past. That means that anytime we talk about something for Unity 3D, it means Unity 3D only, it's 2D. So all the people will be involved in the same discussions at all times. That's what's happening right now. So in terms of practicality, for example, all the 2D developers have joined the INTANA mailing list, on the INTANA challenge, discussing the product in the same way, using the same media as the 3D team is doing.
You guys will be sharing the same code base pretty much anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Developing the 3D part are willing to split their code into non-visual implementation, which will be also very interesting for them to do automatic testing. And then we hook up on this, which means that the behavior is implemented in the non-visual part, and so we don't have to play catch-up. It's implemented only once. The only question with this is how much this will fit into QML, because, well, QML is all about implementing animation and stuff, so we may have to give up on some of QML facilities to ensure that we share the same behavior.
So I imagine there's some explicit tracking on the Unity 3D side for each feature, right? Done, not done. For each new Unity 3D behavior, feature, view-oriented feature, is there an equivalent item for implementation in Unity 2D to ensure that you know at any given time what is implemented and what is not on the behavior side?
Right, so in my cycle, both teams have used bugs and management to track these new features that are user-oriented, but not always they have been synchronized. So our goal for this cycle is anytime anybody in either teams is going to find such bugs, say, oh, we want a new animation there, well, a task is created for both projects.
Also affects, or whatever that is, the launchpad, where you just say, this is part of Unity 2D, this is part of...
Right. And I would advise anybody who finds a bug in any of the two versions, or as an idea, find a task against both immediately.
I have a question from Qt. Obviously, most of our development is going into the scene graph-based Qt Quick at the moment, which is going to be OpenGL based. We're not taking away any features from the old graphics view-based stuff, which is the raster engine, but we're probably not going to add new features there because in the future we're going to assume that you have hardware support and we're going to optimize for that case. So I'm just wondering, I mean, have you tried running on top of scene graph just to see how it works? And are there any features that you definitely know that you are going to need that we don't already provide apart from accessibility? Because that's the only thing I think we need to make sure is backported back into the Qt Quick 1, which is the 2D case.
So the scene graph effort is wonderful. I mean, it's going to improve the performance and add some nice features, I guess, some access to shaders and whatnot. This is fantastic, but we can't forget that we're going to be the fallback if it's accepted for Ubuntu. So that means we won't have access to the GPU when we run.
Yeah.
So we have to focus on this. Nevertheless, I've tried actually this morning to run Unity 2D with the Kemerson graph. It seems to work pretty well, so that's good. That's good news.
Yeah.
I don't foresee any features that we haven't planned already in the Kemerson graph that could be useful.
Yeah. Because the thing is, like, I mean, as I said, we're probably, I mean, language changes and stuff, some of it will propagate back into the one service, but like, this is not where we're focused our development on right now.
That's right.
For obvious reasons.
So I would have two questions. The first one is, will it be possible to have both implementation of QQuick and install in parallel? So QQuick 2 and
Yes.
QQuick 1? Perfect. So that means-
Absolutely. I mean, already if you download the CMRAP stuff, you have QML viewer and QML scene, the same thing. The problem is that your QML files will have a different import statement. You import QQuick 2 or you import QQuick 1. I'm maintaining a project that runs on both sides, and the difference between them is actually very small at the moment. It just means that the C++ plugins you have that is graphical, the declarative items you make, they need to subclass from a different parent item. That's basically the only difference. And you have to change your import statements. And I use Git to do the both branches, and every change I do in the QQuick 1 branch, I just merge it into the QQuick 2 branch. It's actually very easy to maintain both of them. So that's how I deal with it, and it hasn't been a big problem for me at least.
That sounds good. So we should be able to take advantage of QQuick 2 in Unity to be whenever we want.
It should be absolutely trivial to make that transition. But there are some gaps still. I mean, QQuick 2, I know for a fact that we don't have cursor support, or you can hack around it using the application of cursor, but those are minor details that I've found, which we haven't implemented yet. So, because I mean, we're targeting the mobile space primarily for it, of course. So the desktop space, which I'm pushing for, is something that we need to close in the gaps. What I'm working on right now is actually a desktop widget set for QQuick, so that we can pick up the system theme and these things. So that will be more like trying to provide some widget sets, as we did with traditional widgets, but on top of QQuick. So I think there might be a purpose for that in the future, maybe even for Ubuntu, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the Qt components.
Yeah.
That's very nice. So the question I hear most often from all the developers, especially OpenGL developers, is will you be able to write your custom nodes for the KMS graph with OpenGL?
The custom nodes. Yeah, I mean that will be the default. I have to use the legacy Q painter because I mean we are providing SG paint item, which is entirely OpenGL based. And yes, you will be able to write OpenGL code to do the painting in there. But we are also providing a compatibility thing, SG painted item, which paints through the Q image. And that's how you can easily port or migrate from QQuick 1, because that uses the paint architecture. And as I said, I just changed the parent class to SG painted item. I didn't have to do any changes to the items I made myself. And that just magically works. But by default, if you just do it from SG item, then it won't actually have a paint function. It will rely on you providing your own OpenGL painting call. So yes, that is absolutely going to be possible.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is there an OpenGL ES kind of layer there?
It's only OpenGL ES.
OpenGL ES 2.
Yeah. OpenGL ES 2 is what we target and what we support.
Okay.
Yeah. That's certainly going to be possible.
Yeah, I mean, in theory or even in practice, if you want to run it on with the software authorizer as a backend, things like Mesa and Gallium drivers can help.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, we're probably not going to provide all these features back into the QPainter-based backend for QQuick 1, but the idea is that we will have some sort of Mesa accelerated architecture on top of it. We can probably make even QQuick 2 run on top of raster systems, but in theory, it would be as efficient, if not more efficient, because you only have to rasterize the topmost item and stuff like that. We are probably not going to be the ones doing those optimizations that you have to do to make that performance.
So I guess one of action items for this cycle is to make sure Unity 2D always runs with QQuick 2 as well as QQuick 1. Make sure. Yeah.
I would at least make sure that works.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But as I said, I have no problems transitioning between the two. They are very similar to use. I mean, the code is exactly the same in my case, with a few minor hiccups, like the parenting can be slightly different. We'll just run into a few cases.
But speaking of the schedule, SingRap-based QQuick 2 is probably going to be released as part of Qt only next year, or end of the year. So I'm not sure about your schedule. If we're talking about exactly about the 11.10.
Yeah, it won't be part of 4.8. It will be part of 4.8 plus 1.
Okay.
Ish. But
yeah, but there is a separate model, so it can be released separately. That's fine.
Yeah. But also just to not keep that completely off track, even QQuick 1 runs on top of OpenGL right now. I mean, we just choose not to use that backend. We choose to use the Raspberry backend at the moment.
Exactly.
So,
I think the next item on the list is sort of the delta we have, which is a configuration delta between 3D and 2D. Today, 2D uses jconf and 3D uses gsettings, therefore dconf. So I think it's very simple.
what's the mix between G settings and G conf?
Okay.
Yeah, so conf settings and G conf. But when you move to G settings.
So everything will be gsettings based for 3D, and the plan is to do the same for 2D. That's our action item.
We're going to use the same settings and everything.
Exactly. We also want to share the sheet schemas and functionalities where it makes sense.
The thing is, anyway, I expect that loads of stuff where we access the configuration ourselves right now will be done by the shared non-visual libraries, which will access the configuration.
Yeah.
But there will probably be a few items where we need direct.
Yeah, a good example is the list of fabrics. This would be, we want even add library. It would be done automatically by showing back in here.
We will just migrate to you.
User-facing configuration options, can that be shared? So at the moment, user-facing configuration options for 3D are in CCSM, I think, and
Yes, the idea is to pull them out.
right, okay.
We just have them in CCSM because we don't want to expose those as like the main ones to use, so they're just for testing purposes.
For sure.
So Sam, you going to answer that question from Lovia?
Oh, right. Yeah, this one here, the very tricky question of modifying Unity 2D to get the 3D acceleration option. It's a tough question, which I think is being debated a lot. Basically, the reason why we have the delta now is because we need to do more complicated things with OpenGL and Unity 3D than what QML would necessarily provide us with, which is why we're developing them as separate libraries. And also it's because we find that, well, at least we found in the M cycle, there are a lot of barriers that we hit in terms of the fact that the toolkit didn't do things exactly the way that we might have wanted them to do, and this impacted performance quite a bit. And we just don't want to be running into those problems again. So now that we have like a shared toolkit, we'll be able to do that. There is a lot of discussion though to make sure that like the code bases are very much shared. So that means is that we're optimizing the 2D case for the 2D acceleration, and it means that we're not having to like make a compromise between 2D and 3D in the same code base.
Right. But for those who want to try Unity 2D with the OpenGL acceleration, they can launch
It works, yeah.
You can launch it with OpenGL and you will see what happens. And I also recommend to launch Compass instead of Velocity, and you will see what happens.
Speaking of which, do we want to move on to the next
Yes, very good.
Okay, so one of the, it's not actually in the blueprint or anything, but one of the items that we were kind of discussing around last week was moving to Compass as the base window manager for Unity 2D. So obviously, well, this doesn't mean that we're going to be like requiring 3D acceleration for Unity 2D. So like if you still have like your ARM network or whatever, it's still going to work. The idea is that now in Compass we have the ability to run with different compositing backends. So the current one that we have working at the moment is this OpenGL one, which requires hardware acceleration. But for example, it's very simple to write a backend that would allow us to use QPainter. And that means that, for example, the spread can actually move into a Compass plugin. It means that we don't have to worry about like the visual coordination that we're having. So what's kind of everyone's thoughts on that?
I'm an ARM network user.
Yeah.
I think that keeping the, well, it depends. I'm not sure how the Glaze backend is coming on for Compies.
It's on progress.
So I mean, if the Glaze backend gets done well, then I think moving to Compies is good because you get a whole lot of stuff through.
Well, yeah.
And if you could mix and match backends with Unity 2D.
So the idea is that we'll actually be running Compass with a different compositing backend. So we're not actually going to be using OpenGL. We'll be using QPainter to do the compositing.
Okay. And you won't be able to choose. So you won't be able to run, say, Unity 2D with Compies with OpenGL back and or Unity 2D with Compies with OpenGL back, and you won't be able to choose.
You'd be able to choose which backend you actually use. It's just for the case where we know we can't get to the graphics hardware because there's still hardware around that doesn't have the driver support necessarily in GLS. Or there's just like some devices that just have a dumb frame buffer with no graphics acceleration that we need to support. So for those cases, we can actually use a raster backend and just go with compositing software. It's just, the only political issue that comes up here is that essentially that means that we wouldn't have Metacity on the city anymore. Well, the idea is to remove the dependency on Metacity, so we're not using it. Anyone got any points? Okay, that was a very expected response. I thought we would be throwing something.
Is anyone actually starting working on this alternative backend for?
No, but I know how to do it.
Yeah, that's quite a gap from actually doing it. So,
Currently, I'm allocated to more working hours fixing bugs in companies than I am doing anything else. But
Yeah, the trick is there is nobody working on it right now. And if anybody is interested, well, they should really try.
okay,
just seeing a proof concept or something.
if you know how to use QPainter and turn an XPix map into a Q image, you can do it.
So are there any other trade-offs on performance or memory usage or any of those kinds of things?
Your memory usage will go up slightly because you're compositing. Like, that's just a fact of life. However, your performance won't suffer that much because with the compositing case, you're not getting applications to redraw themselves all the time. They don't need to.
But you're also currently thinking of enabling compositing in Metacity anyway, because there is a basic bug in X11 that causes a corruption around when you use the automatic redirection for the compositing, and we need to switch to the other.
Yeah. And what's Metacity's compositing mapping is all X-render, right? As well. It's all X-render.
Yeah, I think so.
So like the one that I kind of had in mind wouldn't be X-render. It would be the same thing that like E17 does, which is QPainter basically.
So in any case, whatever we do, switching to compass and everything, compositing, we will make sure it works in the lowest platform we have, like a very cheap ARM with no GPU or no access to the GPU. It has to work, whatever we do.
Oh, and also just if anyone wants to play around with it, you can actually run Compass without the OpenGL backend, so you can just run it without any compositing backend. It's just that your window decorations will be a bit buggy because we have to do reparenting and all that to make it work. So, yes.
So I just tried this. You can, for example, replace Metacity with OpenBox and under Unity 2D at the moment,
And it works
fine. I presume that's something that would go away if you use Compass backend, or is that still going to be fine?
You'll be able to do that because the shell is actually running a different process.
Fine, and that'll stay if you use Compass. As long as that stays, then you can play.
Right, so it's not in the blueprint, but it's something that we were thinking about some time ago. So actually, right now Unity 2D is composed of various processes. Maybe it would be a good idea at some point to actually have just one process that does everything. I don't know if this thing was, we should probably give some serious thought to this possibility.
So, by one process, do you mean one process for the window manager and the shell? Or
No,
the window manager and one process for the shell?
That's part of the question.
Yeah.
So because right now the launcher is in process, the process dash and everything else.
So I guess the question is, what would be the advantages?
Well, it's right now so you have to have all the pieces stuck together through the bus, which has some performance issues.
Presume the memory usage will fall.
Yes.
There are some common myths around the performance of DBus. The system bus is obviously painfully slow at times, but DBus itself has been tested to be quite fast. We've recently participated in it, so yeah.
I mean, unless there's competing advantages, that's something you have to face. Because the flexibility we gain by having separate programs for separate pieces is invaluable.
Well, some pieces require the others anyway. So for example, all the keyboard management is done in the launcher. So the launcher is not running, you don't have keyboard shortcuts.
That's right, but the way it was done that way only because we didn't have time to spawn a separate daemon that would do that for all the other components.
So you want to add an extra process actually?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
So that kind of speaks
let's discuss
to
that.
an implied requirement that you could run various elements of the Unity interface without all of the elements, right?
Exactly.
So if I don't want the left launcher, heaven forbid, then I could do that.
Exactly. If you want to make part of one component, you can.
Yeah, if you.
Except the only thing is that this is not really often tested combination. So what expect that you
User beware.
Another reason is that we write bad code. The but if something crashes, you don't want everything to crash.
It's automatically restarted anyway.
Yeah, like you don't want everything to disappear suddenly because your dash crashed in the background, you know?
That's the theory behind Chrome too. The browser, each tab is its own process.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So, and I'm
Rest of the
kidding.
case.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We're not writing bad code. It's good code.
But as you open it up for new lens implementations and things, and other code can creep into the overall mix.
That's correct. Even though the lenses are I run in a separate process already. So, in fact, the goal for the code sharing between 2D and 3D is to have all the backend and models fed by other processes to the different pieces of the front-end. For the launcher, for the sub-applications, for the dash, the different lenses, all of that in separate backends.
Does that mean that you could write a lens and have it work on both 2D and 3D without any?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's already the case today.
Oh,
Yeah. What may happen if time permits is writing a Qt binding for libunity, which is the library you use to create lenses, so that you could write lenses using Qt.
so like QML, you could write a lens in QML,
No,
or just straight?
lenses are really non-visual. They just provide items, and then Dash takes care of displaying them.
Yeah, the lenses are just models and they're dashed. Okay.
So it would be mainly Qt core stuff.
Alright, so if I go through the next item, is we write down Qt to use liblamp instead of the DBus API. I don't know if you're going to do that. In fact, I don't think it should be our sort of priority because if we share the backends, we won't use BAM directly anymore. So that's kind of the side effect.
You mean like with the new shared code change, this won't even be necessary?
Exactly. So I guess the real question is anybody using BAM Qt other than Unity 2D? And what happens if we go like, oh, we don't maintain it anymore so much? Nobody?
Maybe that's not a question best answered by this group.
That's right. That's correct. So I guess we'll evaluate that at some other point. The next item, so we're doing, actually the next two items are interesting. Removing some dependencies that we have today. One is GTK dependencies. We use it in some places in the code, but not really for the reason than saving time. And
Don't you want them to keep GTK for theming? Because, well, the way that the theme changes work in Unity 3D is that we just read the theme settings directly from GTK. And you actually have to use GTK account to do that. So ideally, you want to keep the GTK down.
Interesting.
What are the advantages to taking it out?
So again?
What are the advantages to taking it out?
Smaller disk
Yeah,
footprint.
we're looking for really small disk footprints. I mean, there's no other reason to have any of the elements of GTK on the system necessarily for certain implementations.
So I guess the goal wouldn't be to remove the dependency by default, but maybe to make a configuration option so that in prime time you can decide, oh, I don't want GTK dependency. So maybe you want to have theming, for example. Or
You can runtime resolve those GTK libraries you need. I mean, Qt does that. We don't link against GTK. We just runtime resolve everything you need in the GTK style and it's picked up.
yeah, right.
We do
area where
GD loop
Yeah, with it.
for the enhanced picture.
The other area where we use GTK is to look up icons. The other area where we use GTK is to look up icons from desktop files and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is going to be exposed as part of the shared libraries or not. We discussed this because there are issues in that, well, the shared library could provide us the full path, but because of difference in rendering, we may want only the name and look up the appropriate size the icon. So we need some shared lookup code for icons. Right now, Qt does not know how to parse desktop files. Well, it's not really a complicated issue, but getting it right and loading the appropriate icons, I think Florian told me that there were a few subtle differences in the way QIcon from theme work and the way.
But you can just let us know what and we can look into it.
Exactly, so that's going to be part of the synchronizing with you guys is that we don't need GTK anymore for some things. version you need for.
Yeah, if you have specific issues with from theme, just contact me afterwards and we'll drop them down.
I think you could say this as minimize the dependencies too.
Right, minimize,
Yeah.
make it optional.
I have one question more from the Qt side, maybe not directly related to Unity, but more like you have some patches to GTK, which gives you, for instance, on Simpson add these scroll bars outside the window thingies. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I can't resolve or do anything that you don't push upstream in GTK. I'm not going to do it with the specific patches in Qt itself. So the question is, do you have any plans for actually implementing that on the Qt side?
We definitely don't have the right kind of people here to answer that question.
There's a session right now about scroll bars.
Well, you want to upload yourself?
Okay, sorry that I'm in the wrong area.
Just for like the technical implementation of how that works, it's actually like this external module. So the patch GTK is just allowing us to have that module and upload it at runtime and just and overload the GTK scroll bar class.
Yeah.
Because we essentially have to runtime patch applications to use this widget and these widget properties rather than like the base GTK scroll bar. So it's just about getting the modules in and being able to overload.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry for the distraction.
Oh no, it's cool.
Any other question regarding the GTK? Okay. So the next item is a bit similar. We're looking at Unity 2D and we have a bunch of Xcores in some places, also some libraries that depend on X. I guess the idea is to study the situation for this cycle and to make it as contained as possible. So that one day, if we don't have X anymore, if we can't run anywhere else, it's a minimal amount of work to do so. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, which part of X are you actually using? Like just walk us through sort of like what part of X you actually need to factor out. Because it's sort of, as I understand it, you're using X render for the spread.
Another example is we use midway, the re-NTK to do a bunch of management stuff.
It doesn't really have that many X dependencies, so.
Right, so the goal for this action item is to study that, to see where we could do something better or simpler.
And yeah, because all the bin does is, well, it just handles X events in a GLib source and then turns them into events on link. So yeah, the problem is that the way like you actually communicate with the window manager now is actually heavily X dependent because we're doing it all through X properties. I mean, ideally it would be nice if we had some kind of DDoS interface to do that, where we just ported like all of like EMWH and ISIS-EM to DDoS, but that's probably not something that like we have time to do in this cycle. It's nice to have though.
It's an long-term plan.
Yeah.
What about input? You're in X, what are you going to do for input? Input.
English. And we get instructions and everything.
Yeah. Sorry,
Well, today we use just only Qt APIs and KML to do that. We don't do anything else if I recall correctly. So,
except for this mouse area thing, I created it too.
but we don't use it.
Well, we are about to use it again for the
You don't know that yet.
Or,
yeah, to review.
okay, so we need to discuss that, I guess.
Yeah, it's basically an X input window only to discover mouse or other things.
I wish you told me about that before I started writing on the tree. Oh.
But basically, if the Qt input system works, then you need to do work. I mean, that's the general answer.
And does that include frame buffer divided? If we got rid of X dependencies, would that come to include devices with frame buffer and no X? Or is that too many other dependencies you need to get rid of?
Well, that would be another goal. We really need to try it out. Nobody's done it so far.
Are you going to have the multi-point touch support, X input to the file support, multi-point touch support in Unity 2D? Any gestures or multi-touches?
So, well, actually, this is my laptop. And if you go through fingerprint, you get the spread. So you already have part of that in Unity 2D. What we haven't done is implementing the video management features related to multi-touch. Because we didn't want to bother with the text code and do it in there. So if we move to companies with raster backend, we should have that for free. So that's mostly the goal. But for the other features, we already implemented them. need to be proper. So we have three fingers pinch, we have 4 finger reveal of the dash, we have 4 fingers drag of the launcher.
Is it implemented through Qt? Because Qt doesn't.
So
Qt has
it is
these-
not implemented through Qt.
So I was going to say, I was going to ask you that question. What's the max support for touches in Qt? Max number of touches?
Oh yeah, there is no limit on the API side. It's basically the API that exposes it is missing in QML. You get the QTouch events on the C++ side. However, there is no QML component to implement it. There is no QML component that is part of Qt that kind of forwards those touch events to QML part.
Session schedule for data.
Good.
Another thing related to X11 is like we use actually the XKB extension to monitor when some keys are held or not held. So that's another thing that I don't know if that can be at some point integrated into Qt or I don't know.
Well, what about just having Qt use XKB common? Because I mean, the idea is that for whatever is going to happen in the future, that library is going to stay anyway because keyboard support is damn hard and we don't want to be rewriting it. So is there any progress on the Qt front for using XKB common instead of just XKB?
That is a good question. I know that, I don't know too much about that area. I know that Wayland uses also XKB common and obviously Qt because of that uses it through the Wayland and through the XKB common. However, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about just modifiers?
For us at least it's just basically for example the super key is being run or it's not being run.
Qt already kind of has an API that allows you to use that. There is a Q application : keyboard modifiers that return you a list of currently pressed modifiers.
Yeah,
and I believe you get it.
We want this to be global even if the application is not the active one.
Yeah.
Makes it before.
Yeah, that's the best one, right?
Yeah, we just need to discuss that.
Okay.
It is all part of Qt, and as far as I know, there were no plans to add this to Qt.
Maybe it doesn't need to be part of Qt, maybe it could be something separate, separate service for the desktop that is in charge of that.
Yeah, well, they still need to use X11 directly. If you're just moving it out from processing to another processor, you're not removing from.
Somebody's going to have to, somebody's
So
going
it's
to have to communicate with X11 or whatever is there to go through, but anyway.
So basically, your problem is more like so this thing is basically not the problem that if we do X11 call directly, but not from Unity 2D directly. That's a problem. I mean, that's the stuff that you mean when you say remove X11 dependencies.
No, right, no, that's not what I mean. If the application in Qt, for example, really belong in Qt, maybe trying to use Qt to remove an dependency is not the right way to do it. Maybe the abstraction can be done somewhere else.
On the other hand, I know that global shortcuts is a request which comes again and again on Qt forums for people doing utilities and not having access to KDE or stuff like that to get a cross-platform version of this.
Okay.
So I think it would make no sense, but it's up to Qt people to decide.
Maybe it does belong.
Actually, I don't know if you are aware, we're going to have a Qt Contributor Summit, the first Qt Contributor Summit in June in Germany, in Berlin. And lots of KDE guys are invited, are joining, and one of the topics is to see what we can get back from KDE into Qt.
Are we invited?
Chase is going to that one, so yeah.
And if anyone else is really interested in contributing to Qt itself, feel free to join.
And this is like part of the open governance stuff that Qt has moved to, correct?
That's correct.
So about the desktop side, or is it specific?
No, it is unrelated. It is specific to Qt Contributor Summit. It is part of the open governance project. We're basically interested in talking to people that are outside of Nokia, outside of Qt, to see what is their need and how they can help us and we can help them to drive Qt. And just as the way, another advertisement, I think like half of the Qt development will be there.
That's great. How many people is that?
Qt development or the summit? On the summit, I think there will be around 40-50 people.
Great. Okay, the next item, documenting the code base. I don't think it's going to change. Also, most of the code is going to go away anyway, so we don't need to document that.
It's missing the remaining code base.
Right. More interestingly though, we haven't done a great deal of 20 testing for Unity 2D, and that's one of the goals for Oneiric.
But before just sliding by that, is it reasonable to say that perhaps code submissions, merge submissions, should be rejected up front if they don't have sufficient inline code to explain how to use them?
I think it's already the case. We already always say, hey, this isn't clear, please make a comment there, or but we're not strict about it.
It's not formal documentation, it's more comments about what it's doing when it's not triggering.
Yeah, because there is the case where you have to document it tricky code because it's not easy to understand. We are also, here I think we're also referring mostly to documenting like why a class is there and how it integrates in a bird's eye view of how the thing works. Because we do not often document what's the goal of new classes.
So is there an equivalent to doc strings?
Yes.
So can you simply require complete documentation of the API?
I don't think it's reasonable. The API is only consumed by us. So what I think is reasonable to ask is documenting the purpose of each class, like the doc string for the class itself, maybe not for every single method. Because if the names are clear,
But every public method.
we don't,
we are not maintaining a library.
It's a library.
The reason I just want to make the point is that you say that it's only consumed by you, but that's not necessarily true. There could be other people out there who want to participate, who want to use it, and the lack of sufficient, reasonable documentation is in fact a barrier to broadening the number of developers and helping to create, better code.
I think we have a consensus on that, and we need to have the right balance, right? We can't spend 100% of our time documenting every single variable, right?
Absolutely.
So
I mean, you're the one who put it here. I just want to say.
That's however, that is maybe to contribute also to the answer. In the way we want to improve the way we're reviewing code, we want to have a requirement to have necessarily test cases, if not automatic, but at least manual or an expression about to test something. Be part of every code or merge request and merge proposal. So that's one thing. Another thing is that as part of the code review improvement process, we want to document the way things need to be managed at the object lifecycle level to avoid, for example, some of the issues. Well, maybe it's more on the other side of the Unity user interface that we have more of them, but signal disconnections or memory leaks or things like that. So typically, on top of those, new code review guidelines, we need to have one that says if you do create a class or if you do significantly change the behavior of a class or an object, then you need to also update the documentation so that at least the contributors can.
I would say that documentation of the individual classes is relatively easy to follow, but what makes it hard to understand how the shell works is it's written in multiple languages. We've got Vala, QML, C++, and they're in multiple processes, and they're using different libraries like that. That's the difficult. I've found it quite hard to understand how the shell works.
I agree, we have a real problem of architecture documentation, and that's not just Unity 2D, that's 2D and 3D. It took me a month to understand everything before starting the project.
Yeah, I haven't done a month yet, and I don't understand it.
So, how we see things is that it should all go to developer.ubuntu.com, right? Because we started assembling some content on the wiki, like code samples for using the new APIs or architecture documents or presentation we've been giving at UDS, the previous one. They are there, but they are not necessarily visible. So developer.ubuntu.com is really the place where it should go, and the Unity team, there are more people now contributing to the Unity team resources this cycle, in particular David Canella, who's been helping a lot on putting the API documents on this website, and I think this is a discussion we should continue with them in a particular session.
Exactly, we need to schedule a session for that. Can we do that later?
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
I don't know. I also think it goes with some slight improvements that have been discussed in guiding people through Unity 2D Like, when you go on Launchpad, you don't have a link to the wiki, for example, which is a bit stupid because the documentation is there. So there are tiny improvements that can happen as well that you can do right.
Actually, I think the fact that Launchpad does not have a wiki is stupid.
Wow.
That's another
We're not doing anything around that today.
If we're going to kind of think about point for developers that are interested in Unity 2D somewhere, I think we should have an emphasis on encouraging people to implement in the shared code between 3D and 2D, if that's possible, rather than just come to Unity 2D and do their thing and then leave, or Unity 3D. So
yeah, we've been doing that so far. But I guess people are most interested in adding user visible features. Therefore, they start with the UI and then they make their way to the bottom and back into the shared thing.
Well, the lenses are a good example.
Yes.
Of the fact that it should
be
kind of
really
easy to
aspect. We don't have much more time, so
We have 1 minute now.
Finish now.
Right.
So we, on the Etherpad doc, if we go to the deploy patterns or actions that we want to add as Unity, I've lost the link somewhere.
Where's the action?
Well, the coordinates in one section, and so just remove that later.
Okay, that's great. Question to you guys. We are looking for a good automated test framework for the UI. I think exists. We just need to research. Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, we have to find out frameworks to get to. We should discuss that.
Okay. Thank you.